We acknowledge and pay our respects to the Kaurna people, the traditional custodians whose ancestral lands we live and work on. We acknowledge the deep feelings of attachment and relationship of the Kaurna people to country, and we respect and value their past, present, and ongoing connection to country, and their cultural beliefs. We extend that recognition and respect to all Aboriginal and First Nations people.
Heap of them at the moment.
It's quite horror romance.
I just thought the same thing. I
Yeah,
was like,
but it's a rom. But I would say it's no, because paranormal romance is just another word for the same thing. I think.
No.
Yeah, I think actually it is. It's just that
I was like,
Justine, are you getting this?
we're going to have an argument on this.
Oscast.
Amy and is a podcast that explores all kinds of bookish things, and that can include some pretty adult content. So please be aware that some of this content will be not safe for work or for young ears, and be careful who's listening when you are.
So I'm Amy Matthews. I write mostly romance these days, or they call it book club fiction. It used to be called women's fiction, but that's, seems quite a sexist name for a whole genre.
How about chick lit?
Chick lit is an old one, yeah. That used to be a thing. There's actually quite a big male readership, so it was very dismissive to just call it women's fiction. I also host two podcasts. So one is with QBD Books, and it's the Romance Book Club. So I get to interview some of the world's leading romance authors, so some of the people you're seeing on the shelves, which has been a lot of fun. And then with 5 other people, I host Amy And, which is a book club podcast, which launched in March and currently has listeners around the world. So we're on YouTube, but any streaming service if you just want to listen to us. So I have a few of my co-hosts here today, and I'm going to let them introduce themselves. So I have Peyton Hogan. Do you want to tell everyone a bit about your research?
Oh, I didn't think about how to introduce myself. I'm doing my PhD here in creative writing. I'm actually studying satire and health and wellness misinformation, but I'm part of the Degrees of Love Romance Research Hub, so I'm very interested in romance scholarship, and I write that genre as well. So yeah.
Peyton actually writes fantasy romance for fun.
Yeah.
Because everyone likes to write a stray book on the side when they're doing a PhD.
Of course.
Yeah. And then next we have Abby Guy.
I'm also a PhD in creative writing, which is going to be a theme. I write fantasy romance novels, and I research, they call it romantasy in the kind of public sphere. I research that, and I'm looking into specifically men and masculinity in that space, and the manosphere, what I'm coining as the girl sphere, that kind of area.
They tried to silence you.
They did. they did,
Really?
yeah.
The men.
And finally we have our token man, Harry Smith.
Token gay man. Thank you very much. I'm Harry, and I study queer male or male romance. So I'm looking at the romance formula, whether or not it suits queer male romance, why there's like a bit of unevenness in terms of the readership and the authorship of the genre, where there's lots of women that write in the space. So interested in all things queer, gay, male, because it's a really big booming subgenre of romance at the moment. But started out doing romantasy, I think, and then I flung across into gay romance.
So we thought what we do is just talk a little bit about romance trends and let you ask us some questions if you're interested. I'm assuming if you're here for romance that you love romance. So I will start off, and you guys interrupt me because you know I talk a lot. But romance is a huge genre in publishing and always has been. So there's this new narrative you might see in The Guardian or the New York Times or People or about how romance is taking off and is booming, but it's always been booming. So there have been years where it's been 40 to 50% of the mass market paperback market. It's often kind of supported publishing, like it gives the cash injection that allows for literature to be published. But what has changed in recent times, I think, is that we have these two generations, millennials and Gen Z, who are completely unashamed of being romance readers and treat it as a feminist act. Instead of, I think, previous generations, I'm Gen X, we still felt very publicly shamed for reading it. And I think now we have a generation who are like, excuse the not swearing, screw you, don't tell me what to do, I love this. And that it's a kind of feminist act to explore what relationships look like and power dynamics look like. So do you guys want to chip in and talk about any facts or figures or things about romance that you've learned?
I find it interesting how the younger generations who are celebrating their own reading of romance and aren't ashamed of it sometimes forget that history as well. Like, they don't realise how looked down upon it has been traditionally. And
Do
so
you think
sometimes
part of that is, sorry to interrupt, this is what we're like. It's chaotic.
That's good.
We're not being as chaotic as we normally are.
No.
We're being very polite.
Abby often has to edit us to make us less chaotic.
There's only two at a time speaking.
It's amazing. No, but don't you think part of that is that once you're a popular culture, people didn't keep historical records? Like with literature, people write about Jane Eyre or they write about Jane Austen or they... there's documentation, whereas no one actually documented romance for a long time, particularly, the boom since the 1970s. There wasn't any kind of record keeping and the volume of books is so big. Like, do you think it's partly that?
Yeah, definitely. It's interesting how it sometimes leads to, I don't know, like a bit of a rift or a bit of miscommunication between generations as well, because anyone who's been reading romance for a while, we did a talk last year on dark romance, for example. And one of the things Amy was always stressing is that dark romance isn't new. It's been around for a really long time. There have been very dark themes in romance for decades and decades. But young people don't know this. So especially people today who look down on dark romance, they don't realise that it's not new. They feel like it's...
Yeah, I feel like we don't look down on the romance genre, speaking to that generation, as much on social media, particularly talking book talk here, because that's where romance is taking off.
Yeah.
We don't look down on the genre as a whole, but there is the same kind of looking down upon of subgenres within the genre.
It's like infighting. It's so unnecessary.
Yeah, so
we all love the books.
What is dark romance?
Yeah, I was just about to interrupt and say, let's maybe define it. Because I think there is also this thing of people, and I'm not, obviously not this person, because I'm older, but people who live on Book Talk and Bookstagram, who, I learn things from my students because they'll be like, have you heard of this? And I'm always a bit behind because something like dark romance has been trending on Book Talk for quite a long time before it hits the mainstream, but it's hitting the mainstream now. So how do we define dark romance?
Well, there's a big push at the moment to actually describe it as horror romance, which kind of gives you more of an idea of what the books are, and I think contextualises them maybe a bit more appropriately than just the more vague term dark romance, because basically it involves very sensitive topics like assault and rape and abuse and things like that. So yeah.
And quite extreme, like coercion, kidnapping. We probably should have given a trigger warning.
Yeah, but being as opposed to being defined by its taboos, they want to now push it more to talking about sensitive topics, obviously. But then, I think when it first started on Book Talk, it was very, very serious, sensitive topics that were being categorised as dark romance, and then those that didn't quite touch that level of taboo weren't. But now it's kind of opened up a little bit more to just include, yeah, like you said, a lot of stuff about sensitive topics and how we go about, yeah.
So can I ask, how do we define the difference? Because obviously I think fan fiction was the origin of a lot of this stuff. Like it moves often from fan fiction into independently published fiction, into fiction that's now picked up by publishers.
Yeah. I don't know. I feel like with the dark romance specifically, as you were saying, Harry, there are so many levels to it, and it's gotten to a point now where what would normally be in the fan fiction spaces or in indie publishing spaces is now making it to the popular market, and you can find them on the shelves in Big W. And they're just I found one in a YA section
I know.
in Big W the other day. And they're so accessible that now more conversation is happening around it, particularly online and in public spaces. Whereas, as you were saying, they have always existed. But
Yeah, so I gave a lot of talks to the bookseller conferences last year, so Book People, Dimex, QBD, I'm sure I'm forgetting someone. And this was one of the roundtables we kept having, was around, obviously, if you're the book buyer at Big W, you can't read every book that you buy, so you put a lot of trust in the publishers. And they are often picking up books that are doing really, really well in the indie space, like independent publishing space. And so there was a book we started writing an article on, which I'm hoping we'll finish on Gild, this book called Gild, which is about as a King Midas story, but it literally starts with very graphic, dark, coercive material.
Which is funny because as someone who has read quite a lot in the space, I would say it's pretty mild.
Yeah, I don't think I would.
No, see, I wouldn't either. But you've read lots of fan fiction. You've read lots of some of these darker.
Yeah, I've read a lot of like in that space, and I would call it lighter in comparison.
Yeah, so it gets very, very, very dark. Like, I would say, if anyone's read American Psycho, some of it's in that kind of territory. And American Psycho is, still shrink wrapped. You have to buy it shrink wrapped. It's banned in Queensland. And yet some of these books, like if anyone's heard of Haunting Adeline, like that's a good example.
Yeah, that's darker.
That's way darker. That's available in Target, Kmart, and anyone can buy it. There's no age rating on books. And so one of the questions I think facing the book industry right now is, are there responsibilities like with film where you have PG, MA? It doesn't mean you can't go. Like I used to go to X-rated films when I was a teenager, but it means that you're not unexpectedly going. Yeah. You're not picking up a book, because Gild looks like a fairy tale book.
I think that's key, because one of the things that it's hard to talk about romance in general, not just dark romance or horror romance, when we're kind of going through an era of Puritanism. So it's hard to stop these conversations from veering into like censorship territory. How do you regulate things and define things and market things without actually controlling people's voices to an undemocratic level? But yeah, I think you're right that it's almost like an informed consent thing, but in the book world, like knowing what you're getting into when you're reading. And so things like covers and maybe ratings and things like that are important and useful, and don't...
Interrupt, please do.
Thinking a lot of like, especially indie authors or fan fiction as well, they'll do things called trigger warnings.
Yes.
Some of them are doing them now, the traditional publishers, but they're often on the inside cover.
Yeah, I've seen a couple on the first page before you even get to any of the info.
It's usually the first page. People are skipping over that so quickly.
100%. And if you get a Kindle, if you have a Kindle and you download a sample, it skips all those pages. It goes straight to the first chapter. So, I mean, it seems like it needs to be a bit more than that.
And when it was on fan fiction, when you are reading fan fiction, you typically filter it by like tags, and so there's a lot more filter to it, whereas this you're not really filtering. But I feel like the covers speak to what they are if you're in romance, though. Like if you are actively reading romance, you see a dark romance cover and you know that that's dark romance.
Yes, but not everyone would. And then where do we sit with, like, I'm looking at an Ali Hazelwood book, for example, and Ali Hazelwood is quite graphic but has cartoon covers, and actually her YA covers don't look any different from her very steamy covers.
I completely agree. That C.S. Pacat's re-released covers have them in like cartoony with just like a little chain around them, but that's got very graphic sex in it, which is incredible, and most of it is focused around rape. So it's very I wouldn't agree with that as a cover. With what you're saying about fan fiction, you actually have to click next after an NSFW awarding, don't you? Yeah. So it's like another page that it goes to, and then you click that, and then you're actually in. So I feel like ratings, at least, are a smarter way to go about it. Because I had a family member that wanted to buy C.S. Pacat's book for my 11-year-old niece. And I was like, whoa. They sent me a picture of the cover and said, what do you think of this? And I said,
it's one of those ones that's just on the shelf and picked over you.
Yeah. And it looks
sometimes
beautiful.
shelved in YA too.
Yeah. And I was like, damn, don't buy that.
I just have a really baby question. If we can just reel it back a bit, for someone who doesn't read a lot of romance, how does the dark, graphic, awful content match with the romance side of things? So, like, how do you have coercion, rape, etc., plus happily ever after?
We have a theory we're starting to develop, and I'll hand the microphone to you in a minute so I don't take over.
Be much more eloquent.
So the article we're working on is talking about, people have flattened the romance genre a lot and talking about like it's a monolithic thing. But if it's 40% of publishing, it's obviously got lots of subgenres and lots of different levels of content. And so a lot of the theory written about romance talks about it as an idealized genre and a kind of fantasy space that is idealized and soft focus and aspirational. Whereas dark romance, we feel, is doing something else. It's not aspirational, it's not
Or escapist.
It's doing some other cultural work, which I think, in my theory, is that what we have is the first two generations that have grown up in a society with mainstream hardcore pornography, where they've just had it on tap. It's part of the cultural life. It's part of sexual life. You've got, dating apps that are based around sexual engagement, not just romantic engagement. And what you have are these texts that are working through something, that are trying to say, okay, and I don't think it's a mistake. If you look at Sarah J. Maas with The Court of Thorns and Roses, it's a very Disney kind of world. It's a bit like Beauty and the Beast, right? So it's like you have these people who've been grown up on Disney films, some Disney princesses meeting a very highly sexualized world. And the texts are almost saying, how do I feel about this? Like, how do I understand intimacy? How do I understand power? How do I understand sex? How do I understand all these things when I have all these narratives coming at me?
I feel like these kinds of books, I don't know if this is the best way to word this, but I feel like some kinds of texts are more like abstracted from reality than others. And so for people who want to make that big jump into this really abstracted place where morality and norms are kind of turned on their head and you're going into it seeking out a certain kind of affect or experience and working through stuff that's happening maybe culturally around you, whether you're aware of it or not. And then other people don't want that or don't understand it. They're not wanting to make that leap so far out of reality into these very experimental spaces.
Because these dark romances still have the happily ever after. They have these topics, but they still, a version of the happily ever after. Maybe not a happily ever after for someone who's used to reading rom-coms. But like your main couple ends up together at the end, regardless of how they began. Which is kind of the journey of a romance anyway. It's just what they go through on the way to get there is way more extreme. Crueling, yeah. Which I really feel is reflective of, because I feel like it's hard to dismiss the genre and say this is, romance in general gets dismissed quite often as being porn for women, and this genre is being dismissed by people within the genre as well, because it's all of these things, and I'm one of those people. I'm not one of those people, but I don't love
you
the
don't
genre.
like it yourself, but you don't dismiss the people.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But I think it's because when you think about it and look at our generation and just women in general going through a society that does have the manosphere and does have men and like our
And high rates of sexual assault, sexual abuse, domestic violence, coercion.
I feel like these are just reflective of society, which is what romance does in general, which I'm sure we'll speak to. But I feel like that's why the genre is so prominent right now.
We are. I'll say one more thing. We should probably move from dark romance to other
because
subgenres. But it is really huge right now. It is probably one of the big drivers of the industry right now. In whether you're in romantasy or anything else, and even in the rom-coms, you're seeing some darker content come through. But one thing we did as we worked on the article was went back to some 1970s texts, like the initial blockbusters. I don't know if anyone ever read Kathleen Woodiwiss, but she was like the blockbuster 1977 hit that kind of launched the summer blockbuster. And that book is shocking when you reread it. Like it was, I don't know about you guys, but I found like the level of sexual assault that the hero commits on the heroine and her level of trauma, it was quite shocking.
Is this Flame of the Flower?
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think going back and reading that stuff, I realised, like what Peyton was saying, a lot of young people of our generation don't realise how long the genre's been around and how many evolutions it's actually gone through. So coming back to these things now is just reflecting 21st century anxieties of women and minorities and, the people
Power,
in those
right,
groups.
power.
Power, all about power.
Question, by the way. Sorry.
Oh, we've got a question. Oh, so yeah, I agree.
Sorry.
I have a question regarding dark romance. I'm sorry, I know we moved on, but
If you're interested, we don't
my
have to.
question is that in rom-coms, the heroine and hero don't really suffer in their romance, and then they're happily ever after. It's very cute, it's very fluffy, and it's very heartwarming to escape your reality and know
Yeah.
about the heartwarming part of society instead of the rape, the assault, and all that stuff. But dark romance is still considered very, you can say, popular, even though it has all the negative sides of the reality. Why do you think that is?
For me, because I'm looking at a lot of this in romantasy as well, because I find that romantasy often borders on dark romance in the way that it still includes quite negative, like, I find a lot of the men in that are also bordering that line. They're not quite, at the level
Kind of
sexual assault.
pedophilic.
Yeah, I mean, they're kind of getting around. Yeah, you can word it that way. But I feel like now I'm losing my train of thought with that in mind.
I think you were saying something about fluffy rom-coms and the darkness
Yeah,
and the
feel
heroes.
I feel like it's a way for women reading these novels are experiencing this in real life, and rather than escapism, these novels are showing that they can move through that. We have another PhD student who is also looking at dark romantasy, and she always talks about how she can, through the heroine, she can experience these dark things but still gets a happy ending at the end of it. So rather than it being a light, fluffy world where none of this exists, it still exists, but she gets that happy ending regardless.
It's like a different kind of catharsis.
It's a different, I don't fully agree with that, and I think that we should be looking for we should be representing models of men in our romances that are better than what we have in our current reality, rather than our current reality and just kind of settling's probably not the right word, but settling for it.
Rather than glorifying the men that are.
Yes, yeah, I am of that opinion, but there are readers who do get that kind of catharsis, as you were saying, out of it.
So I think, sorry, Harry.
I was going to say, then you see these TikTok men that dress up like recent, and they play into the idea of it. And you're like, this is terrifying. Like, no. We're trying to live through this and work through this in fiction. Please do not become that in real life. Yeah, we've got too many of them already.
I know it's recent for me because I started reading it, but cozy fantasy is becoming a genre. Would that be part of the romantasy genre? Although I have read some that don't require a romantic story plot as the main plot, but
I feel like, because I was going to use a segue to be like, and now that we've talked about dark romance, why are rom-coms just as popular now? And I feel like cozy is one of those, because cozy is in every genre. It is in romantasy. You get cozy romantasies where, they own a magical tea shop, and that's
They have everything, but they're like cozy thrillers,
exactly.
cozy small town, cozy cowboys, cozy historical.
I do feel like it's on the opposite end of that dark romance in that people, because society is the way it is right now, they also want the other end, which is to be cozy.
Yeah, and it's actually just ticking up. So cozy, I don't know if it's for Laurie Gilmore or who wrote Legends and Lattes?
thank you.
Thank you. But the publishers are all looking for it, and they're actually branding books that otherwise might not have been called cozy. Like anything small town is currently being branded cozy because people are really hungry for that comfort. I know I am. And I think if anyone follows pop culture, like with the Emmys yesterday, the way the Gilmore Girls were brought out again, and that's having a moment, and a lot of old cozy shows are having a moment because we all want comfort at the moment. Wonder why. But so I think there is something about that. And the other thing is the data on the readers shows they're the same readers. The people who are reading dark romance are also reading cozy, are also reading rom-coms.
That makes a lot of sense to me, because you don't necessarily, like, if I think about the state of the world, I might feel super pessimistic about it, really nihilistic, hopeless, and then the next day I might think, no, you know what, we can change things, or even if not, it's important for me to do what I can. Like, you're not always dealing with these big issues the same way every single day. You process them differently from time to time, and so it makes sense that you would want those different kinds of coping mechanisms in fiction.
Yeah. Also, romance readers are just voracious readers.
Yeah.
They tend to, any study that's ever been done on romance readers shows they read everything, and they buy a lot of books. I mean, I know we all have books we have on our bookshelves and Kindles that we haven't read, and I'm still buying them and still borrowing them from the
I was
library.
going to say, I feel like 90% of my bookshelf is unread, even though I am reading every day.
And then I reread. then I'm like, oh, I'll try the audiobook version of that one. Loved that on the second read through. And I'm like, wow, why don't I pick one of the books on my bookshelf? But I think the last report I read said that the most prolific romance readers are reading 8 books a week.
Yeah.
Which is wild. And we're not talking like just like a Mills and Boon, like small little novel, not to dismiss them. We're talking a full novel. 8 books a week. They cannot stop.
I need to catch up.
I know, right? Thank God for our book club.
If we've talked about
I'm
dark
actually
and
reading.
cozy, I was wondering if we could steer towards, Harry, one of your research areas, which is the boom in queer romance. And we have Patrick Lenton on the shelf there if anyone wants to borrow Patrick. He's attending the Writers' Festival this weekend that Flinders is hosting called Writers Assemble. And we interviewed Patrick, what month was it, last month?
That was June.
June.
I think, wasn't it? Yeah.
The year is flying by.
It's September, Amy.
And he's a romance obsessive, and this is his first rom-com, and it's a great rom-com.
I wouldn't know it's his first. It's like a love letter to rom-coms.
It could be one of my all-time favourite rom-coms, I think, that I have ever read. It is top tier. I have reread it. I've read it twice. Once on Kindle, once in paperback, and I've just started the audiobook because I can't get it out of my head.
So there's a huge boom in queer romance, but I wonder if you could talk to us a little bit about, you got into your research because you were so frustrated about the fetishization of gay men, like that they were written by straight women for straight women, like it was a fetish. Versus what we're seeing now with Patrick and other authors of own voice male-male romance or female-female romance.
There's a huge
or
boom in it.
non-binary romance.
Where's the one that you bought me? Oh, no.
You've lost it already.
Yeah, so Amy bought me this book only the other day because it is own voice Australian, like, gay romance author. And I was like, oh, great. And of course you picked it up for me because I'm always harking on about how I think that gay men should write their own stories. Because when I started my research, I started reading romance. I started reading heterosexual romance and thought to myself, oh, this is interesting. Like, I like the romance genre. I'm kind of finding this cozy. But I'm not a heterosexual woman. Like, so...
What?
Heterosexual man. Yeah.
You like to
Hold your breath. So I was like, oh, I'll start to read gay male romance. And I realised really fast that there was very little representation of my experience of being a queer person or the experience of the people that I spend a lot of my time with in my community within these romance books. And I was like, oh, I can't even like picture my friends or like my chosen family or like my partner or our love in any of these books. And I started to, dig into it a little bit because I was still going to write like a big gay fantasy at that point there, which would be a great title for a book. The big gay fantasy. But yeah, then I decided, oh, actually, no, I'm really interested in the gay romance genre because this feels so prolific. And I've been doing it for 3.5 years now. Which is so long.
It's really not that long in the grand scheme.
No, it's not in the grand scheme of things. It just feels so long. Because now I'm seeing things like Patrick Lenton's book come out, like Inspired of You, and now we're seeing like indie own authored gay male romances in bookstores. Like this was from up in...
That was from the first chapter, which is... I don't know if anyone's been there, but it's a romance bookstore that's opened up at Edinburgh.
Yeah.
It's really odd. It's in an industrial park, and the woman who opened it above the caravan store she runs with her husband, because up north there really weren't any bookstores, and particularly bookstores that stocked romance. And this place, if you do an event there, is just rammed, like 100 people in this very small space buying all the books. Like it really speaks to the hunger out there for bookstores and for bookstores that stock romance.
That stock romance, exactly. But I just wouldn't have been able to walk into a bookstore probably about 3 years ago and find something straight away that was by a queer male author without going and doing a little bit of digging. Because over 75% of the readership of gay male romance is women, and those people identify in most of the data as heterosexual women.
Why do you think that is? Because I've heard you speak about this before, and it's always really interesting to think about why heterosexual women are reading them.
I think there's a couple reasons for it. One of them, which I've decided only just recently can't fit into the thesis because there's so much I want to say about these things, so it's going to become its own little paper, is essentially the idea that people want to see the patriarchy sleeping with itself is not how the quote usually goes.
Let me paraphrase so there's no rude words.
Yes.
What you're saying is that the fantasy is that men are the victims of the alpha male.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so you want to see what happens when you put two patriarchal figures together and make them fall in love. So that's one of the reasons that is theorised as to why people really enjoy it. There's others include the idea of being able to escape away from a lot of the damage that some romances do. So maybe people might be scared of dark heterosexual romance because they find that it's uncomfortable in its portrayal of women.
Too real?
Yeah, it's too real with what's happening. The men are too, the men are too real. They're too violent. So they pull away and they remove the female subject entirely to find some sort of comfort in the romance because you don't have to think about what's happening to the feminine body. Of course, I then argue that what actually happens is that the feminine body is still there. It's just put onto a gay man by these people that are reinscribing the same patriarchal tropes, the same masculinities and the expectations of heteronormativity onto a genre that is, for people like me, which I don't think is fair. But yeah, there's lots of reasons behind it, but most of them have been theorised because there's not a lot of people that have ever spoken on the topic or have dived into it and written alongside it. So I wrote a book that went alongside the research as well, which turns out is really hard to do. It's not easy.
Let's talk about that because that is something that everyone gets. Is like, oh well, if I get bored at my job, I could quit and just write a romance. Or if I can't get my real book published, I'll just write a romance.
We were complaining about this last night.
We
weren't
were saying this yesterday, last night,
Yeah.
and I was saying I would rather write a high fantasy novel than a romance. I feel like it'd be easier.
I know, but then I'll be
Romance
writing
is
the high
hard.
fantasy and then I'll be like, I'm going to swing back to the romance.
So
And
why
then
is
I'll
it
go,
easy?
it's all hard.
What's hard about romance? What do you have to do to write a romance? What's a good romance?
You have to have characters that are... believable sounds like a cop-out, but that's the best way to describe it. When you can read a book and you can be so distracted by the setting and the scenery and the plot to be like, well, he was a little bit 2D, but it's okay because that battle was awesome and it went for 40 pages. But in romance, if you don't believe that either one of these two people, or even minor characters, background characters, are not believable or actual beings, then the whole thing falls apart so fast. And you can tell when it's not done well, because it does fall apart.
I feel like set dressing feels easier than the internal journey of the characters, which is in every genre, not just romance, but it is so prominent in romance. It is the whole novel, is their internal journey together. And I find that harder.
It's so vulnerable to try and write. We were saying yesterday that romance, all genre fiction is pretty structured, and that's why it becomes a genre. But romance fiction kind of gets put down for its structure, for being too structured and for being repetitive. But that structure exists so that you can do all of the subtextual character work, all of the vulnerability and all of the cathartic stuff. So it's really hard to write. It's hard to write subtext.
The formula can also change, though. I see now more in a lot of books, particularly gay books, gay male books, that people are changing the formula and people are adjusting the speed in which things happen. There's a real big cry for yearning at the moment.
In all romance.
All romance.
Yep.
They want the yearn. They don't want them kissing and making
want
up.
longing.
They want 80% of the book to be just kiss. Just kiss him.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
Do you think that's on the back of dating culture?
I think so. It's the swipe right, swipe left thing that we've got going on. Yeah, where it's you can get rid of people here. So if you haven't fallen in love in the first half of the book, then people are going to be like, oh, well then swipe left. The fun stuff's over.
I watch K-dramas with my mother constantly, and K-dramas have a formula of 16 episodes. Normally, they're often quite longer than that. But I always stop at episode 12, and we couldn't figure it out for ages.
That's when they
and
kiss.
that's when they get together, yeah. And we got bored after that.
Well, that's why it's interesting in a romance, the third act is often very short.
Yeah.
In a good romance, because the tension's broken, it's done. Wrap it up, I think.
So on that one about the characters, I was going to say that people just don't want to read about two shit people getting together. First of all.
Yeah.
But then I also had a question for Harry about gay romance. In particular, I don't know if you've read in the genre at all, but it had its popularity quite a while ago, but it's resurging, and it's manga, yaoi manga.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know if you've read anything like that, but I just want to know what your thoughts are on that.
No, that's very fair. I have not read much in the space of that, but I have consistently been pointed towards it by lots of people that are like, come on, just pick it up.
And it's like, it is pretty much all written by women for women.
Yeah.
And I wonder if it's because they write these male characters who have traits that they want to see in their male partners, and if you agree with that.
Yeah, I somewhat agree with that, yeah. I think a lot of female authors will kind of write the man that they think is going to be great, and then in order to keep that person at like a safe distance, then they just put them with another man, and it seems to make it a little bit safer. But
There's also like heterosexual attraction to the male body. So if you think about straight men and lesbian pornography, surely it makes sense that straight women might like to see two men together.
Absolutely massive. The largest statistic for gay porn usership for Pornhub's last 4 years, which is, sorry to those walking past, is heterosexual women have watched the most out of all of that, and they were 460% more likely to search up certain gay porn stars than gay men.
I don't think we realised when we first booked this, it was going to be in the middle of
everything.
Yeah,
Everyone enjoy.
I feel like you would be concerned if you started looking into yaoi. I don't think you can even start there until after the PhD.
After the PhD, once I'm clean.
because then they turn them into dramas too. It's a whole thing.
Not to mention the cultural side of it, like the cultural considerations that you'd have to make, like where these are being produced and what audiences they're being produced for. And,
It's a very complicated issue because at the end of the day, like, I am a gay person, but it is just my perspective as a gay man. Like, I don't speak on behalf of all gay people. So it's become
We had
tricky.
another question here.
Hi, my question is for Harry, and it is about queer books as well. I have read queer books and I enjoy them, but I've always wanted to ask a question. Are you familiar with Rina Kent's novels?
Is that Rina
Kent.
Rina Kent? I do know of Rina Kent.
There's a book, God of Fury, and there's a book called Monster something. Both are by Rina Kent.
Oh.
And in that book, the two male characters, even though they have a good relationship, a lot of gay people on Instagram have said that they are considered as not a good, you can say, representation of queer media, and it is a book written by heterosexual women for heterosexual women, and I wanted to know, why do women want to read books that are like this, like are not a good representation of queer media, instead of books that are good? Like actual good.
That is a question for the ages. Can you answer that one?
Yeah, that's very fair.
On behalf of all gay people, Harry.
On behalf of all gay people, as the martyr.
And straight women.
Well, I'm not, you know.
It's a great question.
It is a great
think
question.
That's one I think we'll be grappling with. For like why people read things is a really complicated question, because I think books reflect the culture they're coming from consciously and unconsciously, and then they're also creating the culture as they do it. So it's a really complicated issue.
Yeah, I don't think there's much to be said in terms of why I disagree with certain things and why other people find a book really good, or if they don't think it's good. In a weird kind of space, it's hard to define all of this stuff, which is why this PhD has felt like the longest thing I've ever tried to do. Because exactly what Amy said, why people read these things and why people, like, some of them are huge smash hits. Some of the books that I disagree with the most in terms of queer representation are like New York Times bestsellers. They will stay up there, they dominate the market, the authors then carry on through to dominating the market further after that. I don't think that they're good representations. But then again, every queer story that's written, whether or not it's something that I agree with in terms of representation, it is just my experience and that is just my opinion, and that every queer book written is a step in the right direction in some way, I guess.
I also think that as queer romance written by heterosexual women for heterosexual women can't be the judge of what is good representation. And so it's not until the queer community actually says this isn't the correct representation. Like, I wouldn't be able to say whether it's, like, I can objectively think it's good representation, but I don't really know because it's not my experience.
Yeah, and then there's also ones that have great representation, but I think are not great romances. Because the representation could be awesome, but I don't like the characters and I don't think they belong together. And that's got nothing to do with the fact they're queer. It's because I don't like them.
I was talking to some publishers a couple of weeks ago about, I got this question which I liked, which is, if you were a literary agent, what would you be looking for right now? And I know what I have been thinking. So we do a lot of talking about masculinities, and we have a few reading groups, and we were reading bell hooks for a while. The Will to Change, about men, masculinity and love. And thinking about the readership, because in 2017, Romance Writers of America did a study, commissioned a study, where they found 16% of the readership were men, but they were self-identified, so they assumed it was probably higher because men weren't identifying. But since then, they think it's higher. But you don't often find straight men writing romance novels. I'm not openly. There were some early on, like the Jennifer Wilde, the old 1970s bodice ripper author, was actually a guy. They found out after she died.
I did not know that.
Yeah.
Wow, Jennifer
Yeah.
Wilde.
Yeah.
Like ILDE.
Yeah.
Wow,
Yeah.
damn.
But I'm just curious about the stories we tell about love and about, particularly in this moment where we're seeing kind of this gap between Gen Z men and women on the ideological spectrum, about what love and intimacy means and can, like, I'd be really curious to see a young straight man's version of romance and what that would look like and what they think and feel.
I feel like I'd be tentative to pick it up, but that's my bias that's coming.
I feel like, gosh, my answer was going to be, now I feel like it should be sensible and I should say, yeah, men should write romance. Absolutely.
You think you can get off after that? Get off on that one.
I was going to say, I think about this book all the time. It's Juliet Marillier's Daughter of the Forest. Love that book. I just love that book. I would, if I was an agent, I'd be looking for that book over and over again. It's just such an epic, a romantic epic. And there are all
I feel like
kinds
the
of
epic
love
is
in
due
it.
for a comeback. Like the historical epic or the fantasy epic is due for a big comeback.
I agree.
Yeah.
I mean, like, I haven't found a modern day fantasy epic since Throne of Glass by Sarah J. Maas, where I'm like, oh, I love this book. Because I'm not a Court of Thorns and Roses fan. But I feel like we need I want another 7-book one that just like throws me for a ringer at the end of every book. That's what I'm wanting. And with gay people. Yeah, with gay people in there. That'd be fun. Or a reimagining of The Lord of the Rings, but make it satire. You know?
Big gay fantasy.
Big gay fantasy. My big gay fantasy. Winner.
If you were a literary agent, Abby, what would you be looking for?
Is it really snobbish to say that I'm writing what I'd be looking for?
No, that's probably the perfect answer.
Yeah. Well, that's what you do as a
Payton.
writer, right? Is you write the book that you aren't seeing on the shelves. But if I weren't writing the book, I would be looking for, I want romance fantasy. That's just what I want. And I feel like if you're an agent, you typically are picking up also what you like, right? But with men in it who have, you say this all the time, that men who have already gone through
Oh,
therapy.
that was my agent. My agent a few years ago, when I was pitching someone else's bucket list, said to me, what we all want is a man who's already had therapy. We don't want to fix him, we want him already fixed.
So I want an epic fantasy romance journey where he's already been through therapy and she doesn't have to fix him. Do you know
And
what
it
I
has
mean?
dragons.
And well, obviously it has dragons in it, but that's just a given.
So, any other trends we've noticed? Because I'm sure we've forgotten things. Horror romance is a big one. I don't know if
Which is
anyone's
different to dark romance, in my opinion.
Yes, it is. So, on the shelf there is a book called Feast While You Can.
It's so
which
good.
is our book of the... Oh, well, we haven't announced it yet, but we'll announce it to you guys. It's our book of the month for October.
Halloween.
And we got to interview Mick and Onj. So they're a married couple who wrote this book together, which I find fascinating anyway. Like, could talk to them for hours about how you write with your wife.
I honestly couldn't imagine it.
No, I said that to them. I think I would be impossible.
Yeah. I mean, we've all put this out there theoretically a few times, if we would ever write with each other or could write with another person.
Some people, I think, would be a dream to write with.
You
Like
reckon?
Justina would be good, Peyton would be good, Abby would be good, you and I would be awful.
Awful.
We are
Can
too
you
controlling.
imagine?
Yeah.
I'd be like, look at this. And you'd be like,
Yeah,
that's
no.
shocking.
Harry and I have discussed that if we were to ever write together, Harry writes the first draft, and then I do the next one,
I would
and
agree
we
with
just
that.
do draft by draft instead of collaboratively.
Yeah, I
We've
mean,
written academically all together, where we're all on a Google Doc at once writing.
We're
That
good at
works.
that.
We're good at that.
that's pretty chaotic.
And Abby follows along and fixes everything.
Yeah,
She
it'd be
puts
like
in the commas, cleans
Anonymous
it up.
capybara will
Yeah.
be like stalking you in the document, going through and being like, comma. But yeah, I don't think we could write together.
Yeah. No.
I wouldn't, yeah. I wouldn't.
But horror romance, so there's quite a lot of it. There's a lot of queer horror romance.
Yeah, that's true. There's like queerness and horror. I mean, like, because we know of people that are doing their PhDs in that research area, and I always think, oh yeah, those two things really do go together. There's a lot of representation in that space, and a lot that it's trying to do in terms of the body and in terms of identity, because they physically manifest it a lot in horror, which I find so fascinating. So. Yeah, like horror romance is so interesting because you can actually, again, you do the same thing. You can manifest inward emotion, like journeys.
So as someone who hasn't read a horror romance and will be reading Feast While You Can as my first horror romance when we get to it for book club, what is the difference between a horror romance?
That's a really good question because I
Like,
actually
where are the
think
lines in the genre?
Feast While You Can is quite literary. Like I think you could sell it as literary fiction, and I think they kind of stretch the boundaries a little bit more. But if you look at Ali Hazelwood's, what's it called? Oh,
Bride?
Thank you. Mental blank. Bride, or if you look at, just trying to think, there's this heap of them at the moment.
Is Bride horror romance?
I just thought the same thing. I was
Yeah,
like,
but it's
That's
a rom. But I would
paranormal.
say it's no, because paranormal romance is just another word for the same thing. I think.
No.
Yeah, I think
call.
actually it is.
Big
It's just
call.
that.
I was like,
Justine, are you getting this?
we're going to have an argument on the couch.
Yeah, no, because I think horror is more extreme than paranormal. Paranormal's nicer, but in terms of the way the publishers are selling it, they're selling it as horror romance. They're more leaning towards the rom, and I think paranormal romance is just lighter and fluffier than horror romance, maybe. But they're kind of under the same umbrella.
I would say horror romance is pretty. It like experiments with all of the romance beats quite a lot. Like in this one, and if you've seen the movie Love Lies Bleeding, the way that they do the happy ending is really interesting because it's not black and white. You can't say that it's actually like a happily ever after, but also it is like it's just as gratifying
Oh, I like the
as
sound
the
of that.
ending of a romance novel. Yeah.
All right, first draft thinking, Abby might be right. You might be right. Because maybe
I know I'm right.
Because you are always right. Yeah, because maybe horror's got more gore and more horror affect, whereas
Yeah.
paranormal's got more romance affect.
So
It's a
like
paranormal
shifter.
romance.
Because Amy Hutton wrote Ghosted, which is out
Yeah.
now, and it's more like a rom-com that's got some spooky
Yeah,
stuff.
it's like taking your like romanticises, right? Like,
But it wasn't
Fourth Wing-
always. Kerry Arthur in the 90s, her paranormal romance is pretty horror.
Yeah.
So I don't know that's a good article. We should
Bride
write that.
isn't very like violent, I would say. So that's why I'm like, it's paranormal romance. Like I wasn't reading Bride going like, oh, that is awful, that's terrifying.
So what do we
liked
think
it
about
better if it did.
what do we think of Twilight then? Like vampires, vampire romance.
Paranormal.
Paranormal. Yeah.
I
Well,
feel
it's
like
not horror
paranormal to me is vampires, werewolves,
Yeah.
Right.
city, urban.
Why is
If
that
it
not horror?
started with Edward killing an entire town of people, and then they fall in love, I'd be like, this might be a bit more horror.
The horror genre deals with the abstract and the monstrous and otherness and uncanniness
And body horror.
and body horror as well. That's a subgenre of, but it's not doing that in the paranormal romance.
Okay.
Yeah,
interesting.
yeah.
It's
they're
not
like
dealing with that
supernatural.
as a
But
genre.
what if you picked a horror from the 19th century that is more gothic and more like where does gothic fit into that?
Yeah. I
That
think
lends
it's like a
towards
historical
gothic,
genre.
gothic romance.
We have gothic horror.
There's kind
Gothic
of current
horror.
gothic.
Yeah.
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 What
Now
about
we're
like
getting into
tentacles?
weeds.
Not in a
No,
weird
because
way.
this is interesting because this is the problem with
We
genre.
have a question.
Yeah.
Well, I said like, what about like
Okay, we're getting
that with a monster? Is that
That's why we
paranormal?
edit the show, guys.
Okay, so what advice should I take from romance novels on how to find love?
I think what's great about romance novels, and really there are so many subgenres, you have to find the one for you. but his theory of mind is actually seeing everyone as a human being who's complicated, who has a past, who has past hurts, who has trigger points. Like, romance novels are really about how do I communicate with this person who I care about but don't totally understand. Like, they're doing things that are hurting me. I seem to be doing things that are hurting them. I'm very attracted to them. I like them a lot. And it kind of teaches how to sit with that discomfort, how to have a clear communication. Like, they always end with some kind of conversation of like, I'm so sorry I hurt you, I didn't understand. I'm so sorry I hurt you, I didn't understand. I want to try and work at this. It's like, I think it really is a genre about two people from very different places struggling to connect and understand each other. And I think it privileges communication. And that's why it persists as a genre, because we exist in a society where we don't understand each other. Like, I know with my partner, like, it took years to go, I know why you do that now. Like, that's not about me. That is totally about your mother. But, you know, like, you are thinking, I get your context, I understand your history, I understand you a little bit better now. And so I'm not going to jump to being really hurt and reactive. I'm going to start thinking, okay, how do we sort the problem rather than being at each other's throats? That's my opinion. I don't know about you guys.
No, I just felt like I was in the audience, like,
Yeah. I also feel like it's a volume thing, so I think you shouldn't be taking advice from any individual novel. I think you should read across the whole genre very broadly, because no single text is going to do anything perfectly. But when you take everything in its full sum, you get to develop this taken for granted intuition for what's fantasy, what's real, what's catharsis, what's practical advice, what's escapism, all of these things. And then you understand the people who are reading these books as well and what they're getting out of it. Yeah.
No, I agree with all of this. I'm just like, I like the genre. Like, I just fell into reading romance. It wasn't really something that I didn't go into it with interest, which was actually an awesome thing, because it just meant that I evolved to love the stories. I evolved to love the feeling that it gave me. It made me feel comfortable, makes you feel calm. It teaches you how to communicate.
Yeah.
It
I
shows
mean, I think
you...
vulnerability is a really big one. It's a genre that shows people being vulnerable, which we're not comfortable with in our society.
So true. And we talk, like, I don't know, now you kind of have this feeling that you can talk about a lot of things that in your circle or in your family or like your culture and your community, you can talk about those things, you know, like you don't have to be blocked in by something. There's a book out there for everybody, and romance is one of the genres that does show that there are so many different people out there. There's so many different experiences. And I don't know, it just kind of opens you up into this nice little like happy environment where you feel free to say the wrong thing because you're learning about it, you know?
Yeah.
And not in a nasty way or a harsh way or anything like that, but you learn through them. And I don't know, there's something really cathartic about that. That's why I still read it.
Australians are so allergic to sincerity that I think it teaches you sincerity.
So true.
Yeah. And it's scary. I mean, like, dating is terrifying. Like, the thought of going up to someone and saying, hey, would you like a coffee is terrifying.
Yeah, and it's awful. Yeah. Most of the time. Yeah. And then you can read these books and it's really great sometimes.
In these books, the coffee gets spilled down the front, and you're like, "Oh, I'm sorry," and then you don't get their number.
It's your meet cute.
Does anyone else have more questions?
Considering we're on the topic of labelling things, and firstly, I definitely agree that Bret is not definitely paranormal.
I think we need to, there's no definition. We need to think about definitions of paranormal, because I don't feel like anyone's defined that.
I feel like the readership knows.
Yeah.
I think you guys should talk about it.
Yeah, we will.
I'll be tuning into a podcast later. How do we feel about tropes? Because it's an interesting topic in terms of defining novels. I think lots of novels get pushed into kind of this trope. Like, I'm trying to think of a trope, and all I can think of is
like shed bed.
one bed.
Friends to lovers, friends to
Enemies to lovers. Grumpy Sunshine.
Grumpy Sunshine, my favourite.
Forced proximity.
Arranged
He
marriage.
falls first.
Yeah, he falls first. How do you feel about that in your writing and like in general within the genre? Like, how does that change the genre?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because I feel like for a long time it was kind of something critics might have talked about, but it has, because of book talk, has become such a thing now publishers think about. Some writers, I think, probably consciously go into it. I probably don't, just because by the time you're writing a book, you need to be so invested in your characters. It's like you're just thinking in terms of character development and they become real people to you. But if you pick up any book, you could find at least 5, I think. Like, you just can't help but throw them together. Would you guys agree?
I think it's very much like a lot of people say that everything's marketed by tropes now and it's all about tropes, and I hate that it's marketed by tropes. Lots of people say tropes are spoilers, which I feel like I disagree with. But
did you know that every romance novel ends in a happily ever after?
Oh,
Sorry to spoil the plot.
But I feel like very much like we've been talking, that tropes have always been there.
Yeah.
It's just that there is such a huge online readership for it now that the readers themselves are pointing it out, and the readers started marketing it that way through their social media, and so marketing picked it up, obviously, because that's how they were selling. I just feel like they've always been there.
Yeah, and it's an experience, right? Like, if you have a shelf of books, like, there's so many. If you go on to an online bookstore, say, how do I even begin to find what I want? Like, you were talking about fan fiction and tags. It's a bit like that. It's like a category that you know what experience you're buying. Like, if you're buying a friends to lovers, that's a very different experience than an enemies to lovers, right? Or, some tropes lean them to more cozy, some lean more historical, it kind of gives you a clue to what you're going to get.
There's also something nice about the transparency of the tropes being used as marketing, because I think it brought a lot of people into actually realising that they could start to write or learn to write some of these books, because they started to pick up on the trends and they started to pick up on what were some of the patterns that were making people feel a certain way.
Well, like, even you take Anne of Green Gables, right? With, like, Abby and I are massive Anne of Green Gables fans, so we talk about it a lot. And both of us have books that play with Gilbert and Anne, and the He Falls First, Friends to Lovers, Rivals to Lovers.
Rivals,
all of it.
Because some people
I
that
have
don't
nothing to
study,
add to that, sorry.
some people that don't study might not know how, like, what it is, or be able to analyse what it is that they love about a certain book. So when they're like, oh, it is a grumpy sunshine, you're right. Like,
I love Grumpy Sunshine.
My all-time
Obsessed.
favourite thing to write. I love pessimistic, morally grey characters.
Yeah.
And then one that's, like, kind of bubbly. So mine's like, I don't know, partial shade and thunderstorm.
I feel like,
more like what mine's like.
also if you pick, because I would say you and I, that's probably our number one trope. And
Number
then
one.
if you look at our relationships, we're both in Grumpy Sunshine relationships.
The definition of it. Yeah.
Only you're grumpy and I'm the sunshine.
Yeah.
What's your favourite trope, Abby?
Oh my God, I like He Falls First. Yeah.
That's a good one.
He has to do all the yearning. that's what my favourite. Yeah.
Probably the same. I think He Falls First. Yeah.
The yearning is growing on me, I will admit. I'm writing
You
a
didn't
yearning
like
book at the
yearning
moment.
before?
I couldn't stand it, no. I was like, just kiss. And now I'm like, ooh, how long are we going to be able to stretch this out?
I have a friend who wants like 4 episodes at the end of a show of just marriage and living. And I'm like, what?
I saw Deborah Dixon talk once. She's wrote this great book, Goal, Motivation, Conflict, about writing romance. But she talks about having the chapter at the end where you get to see them in their new life and enjoy it for a minute. And I think a lot of romance does do that, have the chapter at the end.
I do like a good epilogue. It is always nice to be like, oh, it has turned out well. Because, like, if we're going to be bad, what could happen? They could have walked onto the street after holding hands and been hit by something. Like, I want to know that it's happy. And the epilogue makes
That's the grumpy.
that's the grumpy. It solidifies that they're happy, and that's why I like it. But just one chapter.
I feel like if I don't know that they're happy by that point, then the author's not done the job of the novel right.
Oh, fair
If
enough.
I need an extra chapter to tell me that they are living
You
happily.
just want to enjoy it, though, for a minute.
Yeah, now
Yeah,
I'm
Abby
pessimistic.
doesn't.
What's your
Yeah.
favourite trope, Aiden?
Oh, I've got a lot, I think. I like slow burn. All my books end up a bit slow burny. And I think that is about not breaking the tension too early. I of the Tesla Sue books, the most popular one is Bound for Sin. And that book drove me nuts to write because they just wouldn't get going. I have a joke at home that if a book's not going well, I'm like, they're still stuck in the town because they were supposed to be going on the Oregon Trail and I got 40,000 words in and they hadn't left yet. And but has sold the most of all those books, and I think people really like the slow epicness of it and the yearning and the yeah. So slowburn, I like.
And slowburn is probably the most trending of the current like tropes.
Enemies to lovers is always big. Enemies to lovers is always a thing.
That's very big in romantasy though, I feel. So that kind of like outweighs your stats, I feel. But in like a rom-com, I'm seeing a lot of slowburn. Like most of them wanna there's a lot on that. On those shelves over there that are slowburns.
I do, and Grumpy Sunshine's probably my number one.
Yeah, it's just the best. There's nothing like it, you know, like two opposite.
It's just funny. It's just really, irritation is funny. I think the minute someone's irritated, it's really amusing.
You're very good at writing banter, though. You're very good. Cheers. Yeah, that I love.
The other good thing about tropes is that you can use them to filter for tropes to find exactly what you want to read. But it's also kind of refreshing when you every now and then remember that you can just opt out and just like go and pick up a random book. Because I find sometimes, I do this with food as well. Like if I like something, I add quantities of every ingredient that I like the most each time I make that meal, and then eventually it tastes horrible because I've like ruined it. Yeah, like sometimes more is just more. So sometimes I need a break.
Fried rice and suddenly all you're eating is a plate of peas.
Yes, things like that. So sometimes I'll realize like why does every book I'm reading just feel so boring and repetitive, and then I'm reading the exact same book every single time. I just need to go pick up something random and remind myself that
have you ever
exist.
picked up a random book and then realised it's the trope that you like all along?
Yeah, that's also like, kind of gratifying when you just find it accidentally
and you're like, oh, there it is again. I just finished one of those, but obviously I'm drawn to this for a very specific reason, and then I love it again.
So we don't have too much longer, but the other tropes that are really big right now are like cowboys. Obviously, I write cowboys. Like Western romance is really, really big. Small town is huge at the moment. And I think one thing we're seeing across the board, if it's romantasy, small town, Westerns, historicals are starting to come back. Horror, what we're often seeing is a move towards a non-technological world, I think.
Very true,
That was really interesting in Feast While You Can, the kind of timelessness of it. Eventually you can sort of place it in the 90s or thereabouts, but really they never say it in the book. But
I'm also of the opinion that if it makes a reference to like texting or Skype, or Skype's so old now, but like, I don't know, Zoom, sorry.
MySpace,
yeah. If it makes a reference to that, or like I'm out. Maybe it's because I like fantasies and they don't do that. But I don't want to be reading a book and they're talking about going to, I don't know, McDonald's. Do you know what I
That's
mean?
been around since the 50s.
Okay.
No, I think that's true. Like, I think the fantasy element is stepping away from right here, right now, in some way.
Would you do a super futuristic romance? Would you read one of them? I don't think I've ever read one. Like a Tron, Tron romance.
Sci-fi romance.
There are some. Yeah, even back in the day, like, did anyone ever read Joanna Lindsay, one of the old bodice rippers? She used to write these futuristic ones. She used to write everything. Like, she had Vikings, medieval, regencies, pirates. She used to write these fantasy epics set in the future.
I feel like stepping away from technology makes so much sense, because there's all this research about how when you feel so personally hit by terrible events that are happening all around the world and you feel trapped in helplessness, then not only is it not good for you, but it also disempowers you from ever doing anything. But people don't realise how much of an impact you can have when you're just focusing on your little corner of the community. Even if it's just you're losing sight of, because you can't change the world, and you kind of have to accept that and try and change your corner of the world. And that's not only having a positive impact on people around you, much more so than just being inactive and paralysed by fear, but it's also so much better for your mental health. Like, they find that activists, imagining the things that they're confronting on a day-to-day basis is horrible, and yet they tend to do better mentally than those of us who just feel trapped and helpless because they're actually doing something and they're communing with people. I feel like those small town books kind of give me a taste of that. Like, everyone's wanting to contribute to this smaller community.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting because community is one of the things, and Justina, who's filming us today, but is usually on the pod, her PhD is a lot about queer community and the importance of community in romance. And I think that happens both on page and off page, because if you think of Book Talk, Bookstagram, book clubs, one thing that there's this craving for are these kinds of events. Like most authors do a lot of these. Like I think this is my 4th in the last 7 or 8 days. And it's people want to get out and meet other readers and talk about books, and the community aspect's really big with romance, I think.
Yeah, it's probably the part that I've enjoyed the most actually. Is just the social community aspect of being part of the romance community. I think you find that all of this can be very isolating at times, whether or not you're studying, whether or not you're working, whether or not you're trying to write a book.
Do you mean contemporary life or what?
Contemporary life. I would say particularly in the arts and stuff like that as well. Community is so important because most of our work is very individual, unless we're doing it alongside other people in groups and things. So I think that the community aspect, particularly of the romance community, is one of the reasons that I've probably kept going. One of the reasons that I've continued to reinvest is because you see new people come in after you've been the new person, and then you just watch it continuously roll over, and that it does require input. It does require people that are actively going to contribute, like you do when you go to author events. When we sit here and do a talk like this, there might be people here that don't like romance at all, and maybe they'll walk away after this going, oh, you know what?
I love it when you have someone who has been reading romance, but maybe a little bit ashamed of it, hasn't talked to anyone, and goes to an event or goes into an online space and is like, oh, I'm not the only one. I've got people.
Or the opposite, when people have been doing it for so long but haven't seen it championed, and then they go, I can't believe that I now just get to come and watch people rave about romance and how great the genre is. That also feels just as good on my part.
We all go to a romance writers conference in August every year, and it's the most
where
amazing
we all caught
space.
the flu this year.
I apologise for some coughing. It's 3-week-old flu. It's not actually the flu anymore, but it's
something.
Yeah, it's just hanging around. But yeah, the romance writing community at that conference, if I have to write romance books to go to that, then I will. Yeah, it's amazing.
Well, thank you so much for this session. Thank you for the lively conversation. I hope everyone enjoyed here today. So please join me in thanking Amy and Peyton, Abby and Keri.
Amy And is hosted by Amy Matthews, Abby Guy, Peyton Hogan, Justina Ashman, Harry Stewart and Lily Heffernan. This podcast is recorded on Gardenland with music by Anthony Wignall and Mass Mysterio. Our logos and branding are designed by Abby Guy. This episode was edited by Justina Ashman.